That night, I thought I was just locked in the cramped pantry by the kitchen. I did not know every slap. Every punch from my stepmother was being recorded by 2 cameras she herself had forgotten. I did not know that 10 miles away, in a rehab room smelling of antiseptic. My rich grandfather was sitting up straight for the first time in weeks, pulling a large screen closer and hitting play on the slow-motion replay. My name is Marley Rhodes. I am in my early 30s, and until recently, I was an internal investigator for Harborline Risk Solutions. My job was finding the rot inside the building. Now, I am temporarily unemployed, living back in my childhood town of Riverton, Colorado, in my father's house, to care for my maternal grandfather. The Saturday morning brunch had left the kitchen in its usual state of luxurious chaos. Smeared plates of artisanal jam, half-empty glasses of mimosas sweating onto the marble island, the air thick with the smell of expensive coffee, and something sour I could not quite place. Maybe it was just the tension. My stepmother, Vivian Rhodes, glided through the mess, her silk caftan immaculate. She was a woman who never spilled. Vivian controlled this house, from the catering menus to the volume of my father's voice. My father, Alan Rhodes, was already retreating to his study. A man constitutionally programmed to flee conflict, he heard the slight edge in Vivian's voice, and like a conditioned animal, he sought his sanctuary. "Marley, darling," Vivian said, her voice bright and brittle. She stacked plates with unnecessary force. "It is so wonderful having you here, really, but we must talk about your contribution." I stopped loading the dishwasher. Here it came. "I know you feel you are earning your keep by watching Edgar," she continued, using my grandfather's name like it was an asset she managed. "But this house does not run on good intentions. Alan and I are stretching things quite thin to accommodate everyone." I looked at the Sub-Zero refrigerator, the freshly renovated backsplash, the sheer expense of the room. Stretching thin was not the term I would have used. "You are using your grandfather's money, after all," she added, the smile never leaving her face. It was a practiced dig, designed to sound like casual observation while reminding me I was a dependent, a debtor. I did not take the bait. I just nodded. "I am happy to cover my expenses. Vivian, just let me know what they are." My gaze drifted upward, past her perfectly highlighted hair, to the corner of the ceiling, a small, dark dome, the security camera. Vivian had it installed last year, ostensibly to watch the housekeeping staff. She feared theft, she said, though she usually just used it to critique their dusting patterns from her iPad. She was so accustomed to it being her tool that she forgot it was always on, always recording, 24/7. "Good," she snapped, the smile fading. The performance was over. "Actually, there is something we need to discuss in private. Come." She did not wait for an answer. Just walked toward the pantry. The pantry was her real office, the one place she believed was off camera. It was a narrow, deep closet off the kitchen, packed floor to ceiling with wire shelving. The door swung shut behind us with a heavy click, sealing us in. The only light was a single, dim yellow bulb overhead. It smelled of spilled soy sauce, bulk spices, and the metallic tang of the steel shelves. It was immediately suffocating. Vivian's demeanor shifted instantly. The gracious hostess vanished, replaced by the sharp-edged woman I knew from 10 years of family holidays. She was holding a thick sheaf of papers, bound by a binder clip. "Your grandfather is not getting better, Marley," she said, her voice flat. "His vitals are stable. The therapist said his mobility is improving." "He is old," she cut me off, "and his affairs are a mess. Your father and I have been trying to consolidate things, to protect his assets, but we need your signature." She thrust the papers at me. I recognized the letterhead of a law firm I did not know. "Authorization of Fiduciary Access," the title read. "What is this?" I asked, scanning the dense paragraphs. "It just gives Alan temporary oversight, power of attorney, so we can pay his bills, manage the estate without bothering him. It is standard. His bills are paid by his trust, Vivian, and Martin Sawyer handles his estate." Martin was my grandfather's lawyer for 40 years. Martin is old school. This is complicated. We found a better advisory group. I held the papers out. I am not signing this. Not until Martin or my own lawyer has reviewed it. Vivian's face, which had been set in impatient lines, tightened into something else, something ugly. "You ungrateful little bitch," she hissed. The words landed in the small space like rocks. "We take you in. We let you live here, eat our food. After you failed at whatever dead-end job you had. You have no family of your own, nothing. You owe us. You owe your father." I kept my voice level. It was a skill I had perfected at Harborline when interviewing executives who were stealing millions. Stay calm. Let them escalate. They always show their hand. "I am Edgar's granddaughter," I said clearly. "I am not your debtor." That was the mistake, or perhaps that was the catalyst. I never saw the first hit coming. She moved fast. She grabbed a fistful of my hair, yanking my head down, and slammed my face sideways into the wire shelf. The impact was shocking. Pain exploded on my cheek. The metallic smell was suddenly in my mouth. The taste of my own blood. Cans of chickpeas rattled, one falling and striking my shoulder. "You think you are better than us?" she screamed, her voice no longer controlled but ragged. She shoved me hard against the opposite wall. My back hit the drywall with a dull thud. She slapped me, a bright, stinging crack that echoed in the tiny room. My ear rang. "You come in here, judging us, with his money?" Another slap, this one open-palmed, harder, snapping my head back. I tasted salt. She was strong, fueled by a rage that had clearly been simmering for months, maybe years. This was not about a signature. This was about control, about the fact that I was Edgar's blood, and she was not. She grabbed my arms, pinning me, shaking me. "You will sign it! You will sign it, or I will make your life here a living hell." My training kicked in, overriding the panic, the pain. I did not fight back. Fighting back would make it a brawl. This was an assault. My mind went cold, clinical, observe, record, survive. My eyes, watering from the impact, focused. Through the narrow gap between the pantry door and the frame, I could see the kitchen beyond, and on the far wall, mounted near the ceiling, was the small, black dome of the main kitchen camera. It was watching the doorway. But that was not all. My gaze dropped, lower, to the outlet near the floor, just outside the pantry door, and in that outlet, almost invisible unless you knew exactly where to look, was the tiny pinprick lens of my own device. A discrete camera I had plugged in 3 weeks ago. It was aimed perfectly, capturing the entire pantry entrance and reflected in the stainless steel of the refrigerator handle. A partial view of the inside. A tiny, steady blue light, no bigger than a speck of dust, glowed on its surface. It was active. It was recording. I had installed it because I suspected Vivian was stealing petty cash. I had not anticipated this. As her hand came up again, my body tensed for the blow, but my mind was 10 miles away. In the sterile quiet of the Lanecrest Rehabilitation Center, Edgar Lane was, in fact, sitting up. The physical therapist had left him for a scheduled break, and he was alone. The large television in his private room was not tuned to a news channel. It displayed the gridded interface of the Stonebridge monitoring system, his system. He had been watching footage from the previous night, checking on a nurse he suspected was too rough. An alert popped up in the corner of his screen. Motion detected. Kitchen or pantry. High activity. He grunted, tapping the oversized remote. The grid dissolved, replaced by the live feed from the kitchen. He saw the empty room, the messy island. Then he saw the pantry door. He heard the muffled shouting. His eyes, old but sharp, narrowed. He tapped the remote again, switching feeds. The system pulled up the camera I had labeled Kitchen Outlet. The view was low, angled up. He saw the pantry door shutter. He saw me stumble backward, saw my face. Then he saw Vivian, her arm raised, her face contorted. Edgar's hand, thin and papery, gripped the remote. He watched for 5 seconds. He saw the slap. He heard the crack. He saw me fall against the shelves. He did not call the nurses. He did not shout. His face became a mask of cold, quiet fury. He slowly, deliberately, hit the rewind button. He watched the last 30 seconds again. He zoomed in, enhancing the image, capturing Vivian's face at the peak of her rage. Then he picked up the secure phone Martin Sawyer had insisted he keep. He dialed the lawyer's direct number. Martin Sawyer answered on the first ring. "Martin." Edgar's voice was not the weak patient's voice the family heard. It was the voice that had built an empire of lumber yards and warehouses. "Activate the full recording protocol. They have gone too far." 6 months. That was how long I had been back. 6 months ago, I was not bleeding in a pantry. I was in Houston, in a glass high-rise, staring at a monitoring report on my dual screens at 2 a.m. I was at the top of my game at Harborline Risk Solutions, tracing encrypted data trails to find out which senior vice president was selling proprietary code to a competitor. My job was to find the rot, the liars, the thieves inside the fortress, and I was very, very good at it. It was also, quite literally, killing me. The burnout was not a gentle slope. It was a cliff dive. I tendered my resignation on a Tuesday, packed my apartment by Friday, and on Saturday, my father called. My grandfather, Edgar Lane, had suffered a minor stroke. It was not life-threatening, he assured me, but it was a warning. Edgar needed care, he needed family, and I, suddenly adrift, was the only family member with both a flexible schedule and, as my father put it, a good head on her shoulders. So I drove home to Riverton, Colorado, back to the world I had spent the last decade escaping. I came back for Edgar, only for Edgar. My grandfather is not like my father. Edgar Lane is a self-made billionaire. He built his empire, Lane's building supply and warehousing. From a single beat-up flatbed truck and a handshake deal on lumber scraps, he is old school, disciplined, and detests being conned. He is the kind of man who checks the receipts for a $10 coffee. He loved me because I was the only one in his orbit who never asked him for anything. I got my own scholarships, paid my own student loans, and built my own career. In Edgar's eyes, that financial independence made me the only sane person in the family. My father, Alan, was supposed to inherit that empire, but Alan has a taste for luxury and a spine made of jelly. His passion was high-risk real estate, flashy condo developments in ski towns that looked stunning on brochures and collapsed financially within a year, after one particularly disastrous project in Telluride cost the company well over 8 figures. Edgar stripped him of his executive title. My father was, in essence, demoted. He is still on the payroll, a regional manager in a company he was meant to own. The resentment simmers under his skin, a constant, low-grade fever that he treats with expensive golf memberships and by letting his wife run his life. That wife is Vivian. She came into our lives about 10 years ago, a whirlwind of charm and expensive highlights. She had been a sales manager for a big cosmetic brand, and she knew how to close a deal. My father, still smarting from his demotion and a messy second divorce, was an easy sale. But Vivian was smarter than that. She did not just target Alan, she targeted Edgar. She played the part of the perfect, stabilizing influence. She was the one who, in front of Edgar, would gently take my father's whiskey glass and say, "That's enough for tonight. Honey, remember your blood pressure." She presented herself as the ultimate representative of the family, polished and perfect. The performance was masterful. At family barbecues, she was the gracious host, floating across the patio, refilling glasses. At church, she was humble, organizing food drives. She always made a point of performing her role as model stepmother for the crowd. "Marley, daughter," she would boom across the lawn at a 4th of July party, pulling me into a hug that smelled of Chanel and hairspray, all for the benefit of their watching neighbors and business associates. But when we were alone, the temperature dropped 20 degrees, The public affection was replaced by a stream of subtle, corrosive remarks. If I came home for Christmas wearing a coat I had bought at a consignment shop, she would touch the sleeve and murmur, "It's amazing what they can do with synthetics these days, isn't it? So practical." It was never a direct attack, just a quiet reminder that I was not on her level. I did not care. I had my own life. I chose a career in investigations precisely because I prefer data to drama. I trust spreadsheets, not smiles. My job trained me to spot the discrepancy, the anomaly, the story that sounds too good to be true. And Vivian's story of the perfect, loving family was the most polished lie I had ever seen. I stayed away, building my life in Houston, keeping a safe distance. Then came the stroke. Edgar, pragmatic as ever, decided he needed daily observation. He refused a sterile nursing home. He wanted to be near Alan. This decision, logical on its surface, was a catastrophic shift in the balance of power. It meant moving Edgar into the sprawling ground-floor guest wing of Alan and Vivian's home. Instantly, Vivian became the gatekeeper. She was the one managing his care. She vetted the private nurses. She scheduled his physical therapy. She consulted with his doctors. She became the sole conduit of information between Edgar and his own life. The power was intoxicating for her. She wore it like a new diamond bracelet. Her manipulation was a two-front war. With Edgar, she painted me as a saint. "She's just wonderful," she would say to him, fluffing his pillows while I was in the room. "Marley works so hard, and she still refuses to take a cent of the money you offered her for helping. Such integrity." Edgar would nod, his eyes bright with pride. Then, she would find my father. I would overhear them in the kitchen, her voice a low, anxious thrum. "Alan, I am so worried about the pressure," she would whisper. "Marley is intense. She questions everything. She just does not understand the financial burden we are under, keeping this house up to his standards." The financial burden, that was the real story. To make Edgar comfortable, the house had undergone a massive, lightning-fast renovation. What started as making the bathroom handicap accessible somehow ballooned into a complete gut job of the guest wing. New hardwood floors, custom cabinetry, automated blinds. The kitchen, which was nowhere near Edgar's suite, suddenly boasted a new $1,000 espresso machine and countertops of polished quartzite. I knew what Edgar's trust paid for his home care. It was a generous sum, more than enough for nurses and modifications. It was not enough for this. I recognized the smell of financial panic masked by the smell of new paint. They were leveraging Edgar's illness to fund their lifestyle, justifying it as his care. Edgar was weak, but he was not stupid. He built an empire by counting every nail and every 2x4. A week after he moved in, a discreet van from Stonebridge Monitoring Services arrived. "For safety," Edgar announced gruffly, "in case I fall, to make sure the nurses are doing their jobs." Cameras were installed, small, tasteful domes, covering the main entrances, the hallways, and the entire perimeter of his suite. Vivian was delighted. She thought they were status symbols. She did not realize that the technicians reported only to Edgar. She and Alan were never given the password. The only ones with full administrative access were Edgar himself and the monitoring company. I felt the old familiar itch, the one I got at work when I knew a file was hiding something, the pull of money, the tension of lies. I was busy, genuinely busy, running his medications, fighting with the insurance bureaucracy, rubbing lotion into his thin, papery skin. I told myself to ignore the small things. I ignored the courier envelopes from private banks I did not recognize. I ignored the hushed, angry phone calls Vivian would take on the patio, her back rigid. I ignored the way my father flinched when I brought up the household accounts. I tried to dismiss it all as the ugly, ordinary greed of a family bracing for an inheritance. I kept my head down, focusing on my grandfather, until the small things were not small anymore, and the lies stopped being whispers and started demanding my signature. The first sign was small, a digital whisper. I was sitting beside Edgar's bed, reading him the stock tickers from the Wall Street Journal. When my phone vibrated on my lap, it was a mundane alert, an email from a regional bank. Riverton Valley Trust. I did not bank with them. The subject line read, "Welcome to your Advantage Gold checking account." I frowned, tapping it open. "We are excited to confirm your new account," it read. "Your starter checks and debit card will be mailed to your address on file." I scrolled down, looking for the address. It was not my old apartment in Houston. It was here, 144 Oakmont Drive, my father's house. I had not opened a bank account in almost 5 years. Vivian, who possessed a supernatural radar for the flicker of a phone screen, glided in, ostensibly to bring Edgar fresh water. "What is that? Marley? You look like you just saw a ghost." I kept my voice neutral. "It's nothing, just a spam email, a bank claiming I opened an account." She let out that bright, dismissive laugh, the one she used at cocktail parties when someone told a bad joke. "Oh, goodness, the banks are just hopeless these days, are not they? They are always mixing things up. Let me see." She reached out and took the phone from my hand before I could object. Her eyes scanned the screen for less than 2 seconds. "Oh, them," she scoffed. "They are notoriously sloppy. Their systems are ancient, probably a clerical error. Honestly, it is a security risk just having that in your inbox." Her thumb moved with practiced speed. She swiped, tapped, and the email was gone. She handed the phone back to me, her smile a mask of helpfulness. "There," she said, patting my arm. "All gone. I actually know the branch manager over there, a man named Henderson. I will call him Monday and get it sorted out for you. These things are just so needlessly complicated. Do not you worry your head about it." "Thanks, Vivian," I said. My voice was calm, but my heart had begun a low, heavy beat. At Harborline, we had a rule: never trust a volunteer who deletes the evidence. Her reaction was too smooth, too fast, too helpful. That night, I waited until I heard the soft click of her office door closing and the distant murmur of the television in my father's den. The house was finally still. I went to my room, locked the door, and opened my laptop. I did not bother trying to retrieve the deleted email. I went straight to the source. My job had given me access to professional-grade data monitoring services, but I did not need them. I started simple. I pulled my own credit report. The loading bar crawled across the screen. Then the page refreshed. My stomach tightened. My score was excellent, but that was not what I was looking for. I scrolled down to the inquiries section. My breath caught. In the last 30 days, there had been 3 hard inquiries, one from Riverton Valley Trust, 2 others from major national credit card companies. I scrolled further, to the section marked New Accounts and Applications. There it was, not just a checking account, a business credit application, filed 9 days ago. My name, Marley A. Rhodes, and my social security number were listed as the primary guarantor. My blood ran cold. The co-applicant was a corporate entity I had never heard of. Riverton Property Solutions, LLC. My hands were steady. They always were when I found the rot. This was just a data trace. I opened a new tab. Colorado Secretary of State, Business Filings. I typed in the name. The result popped up in less than 3 seconds. Riverton Property Solutions, LLC, formed 8 weeks ago. Stated purpose: real estate consultation and investment. Registered agent and organizer, Vivian Rhodes. It was a shell, a brand new $200 filing fee that created a legal bucket, and she was trying to link my name to it. The old habits took over. I was no longer Marley, the burnt-out caretaker. I was Marley, the investigator, building a case, screenshot, save as PDF, encrypt. I created a new folder, buried 5 layers deep in a system directory. I named it Case File ELR, Edgar Lane Rhodes. I saved the credit report. I saved the LLC filing, the paper trail. She was using my clean credit, my identity, to secure funding for her shell corporation. A few nights later, the second piece of evidence fell into my lap. I was heading to the kitchen for a glass of water. Walking softly on the thick hall runners, Vivian was in the kitchen, her back to me, the refrigerator door open, bathing her in white light. She was speaking into her phone, her voice a low, furious whisper. "I told you. He will not sign the new power of attorney," she hissed. "He is barely lucid half the time, but when he is, he just keeps deferring to that fossil Sawyer." There was a pause. She grabbed a bottle of water. "No, it does not matter," she continued, her voice sharp as glass. "We use the other route, the niece. She'll sign anything I put in front of her. She trusts me. She thinks this is all just to help her grandpa." I did not breathe. I stepped back, melting into the darkness of the hallway. She was talking about me. She thought I was a fool. My world tilted. The house was no longer a home. It was a hostile environment. I was no longer a daughter. I was a target. My focus shifted. I stopped being a participant and became an observer. I started running surveillance in the house I grew up in. I noticed things. I noticed how Vivian was always the first one to the mailbox. The mail carrier, a friendly man named Dave, arrived every day around 11 a.m. Vivian, suddenly passionate about her front yard hydrangeas, was always gardening or sweeping the porch at 10:55. I watched from the living room window. I saw her greet Dave, take the thick bundle of mail, and sift through it right there on the porch steps. The catalogs and magazines went into one pile. The thick windowed envelopes, the ones from brokerage firms, banks, and Lane Holdings, all addressed to Edgar, were slipped neatly into her apron pocket. "I'll make sure he gets these right away," she would call out, waving, the picture of a dutiful daughter-in-law. Those envelopes never made it to Edgar's desk. I watched her go straight to her private office and shut the door. And my father? Alan was a ghost in this conspiracy, a shadow of complicity. He pretended not to see the mail. He pretended not to hear the late-night calls. But he was a beneficiary. I saw him one afternoon, standing in the grand foyer, staring at his phone. His face was pale, his brow slick with a thin sheen of sweat. He kept refreshing his banking app. Refresh, refresh, refresh. Then, suddenly, his entire body went limp with relief. He let out a long, shuddering breath and muttered, "Thank God." I chose that moment to walk past, heading to my grandfather's room. I glanced at his screen. It was his bank account. A new line item had just appeared. Intra-account transfer. Lane Holdings, pending. He was not a partner in her scheme. He was a dependent, a nervous child waiting for the allowance Vivian had managed to siphon from the estate. I had to try. I had to know if my grandfather was aware. That evening, I sat with him while he did his physical therapy, slowly lifting a 3-pound weight with a trembling arm. "Grandpa," I started, keeping my voice gentle, "are you worried about the finances? All these new expenses? The renovations?" He set the weight down, his breathing heavy. He looked at me, his old eyes tired but still piercing. "Money," he sighed, the word tasting like ash. "That is all Alan and Vivian think about. It is a disease. I am worried Vivian is managing things too much," I hedged. "I think she's keeping things from you." He shook his head, a gesture of profound, weary sadness. "Marley, I have Martin. He is my lawyer. He is my firewall. He handles the trust. I am too old for this fight, child. I do not want money to break this family apart any more than it already has." His gaze fell on a framed photo of my mother, his daughter, on the nightstand. I understood. He was sick. He was tired. He was in his son's home, and he was choosing peace over war. Hoping his lawyer was enough to hold the line. The stress of knowing the full truth, that his daughter-in-law was a fraudster and his own son was a willing accomplice, it could send him right back to the intensive care unit. I was here to protect his health, not to detonate his life. "You are right, Grandpa," I said, forcing a smile, adjusting his blanket. "You are absolutely right. You just focus on getting strong. I will handle the rest." But handling it meant I had to know the full scope of the damage. I could not rely on the credit report alone. I went to my room, shut the door, and picked up my phone. I was the account holder, after all. I called Riverton Valley Trust. I spent 45 agonizing minutes navigating automated menus, typing in my social, answering security questions based on a fraudulent application. Finally, a human voice, a fraud specialist. "Yes, Ms. Rhodes," she said, her voice professional and wary. "I see your application for the Advantage Gold checking account and the linked application for a $100,000 line of credit." $100,000. My blood ran cold. "I did not authorize that," I said, my voice like ice. There was a long, awkward silence on the line. The specialist's tone shifted from customer service to legal caution. "I see. Well, that is very serious. Ms. Rhodes, our compliance department actually flagged this one. That is why the account was opened, but the credit line was not. The signature on the digital application did not match the scan of your driver's license." "What else?" I asked. "Was there a power of attorney form?" "Yes," she said. "It was faxed from a Riverton Property Solutions. We have it right here, signed by a Ms. Vivian Rhodes, as your agent." "She is not my agent. I have never signed a power of attorney in my life." "I see," the woman said again. "Well, that would explain the rejection. In fact, our system shows that application was a secondary attempt. I see a prior application from last month, also from Riverton Property Solutions, also rejected. That one was for a home equity line of credit." "On what home?" The specialist typed. "The property listed as collateral is 144 Oakmont Drive." "I do not own that home." "We know, ma'am," the specialist said dryly. "That is why it was rejected." I hung up the phone, my hand shaking. This was not just theft. It was desperate, clumsy, and terrifying. She was throwing applications at every bank in town, using my name, my credit, forging legal documents. She was trying to mortgage a house that was not hers, using a co-signer who had not agreed. This was the rot. This was the case file. Vivian was not just covering the cost of new countertops. She and my father were drowning. Their high-risk ventures, their lifestyle, it was all collapsing. They were using Edgar's illness and my presence as the busy, trusting caretaker to build a firewall of paper. When the banks finally came calling, when the fraud was too big to hide, the trail would not lead to them. It would lead to me, the new account holder, the co-signer, the disgruntled niece with the forged power of attorney. I was the scapegoat. I walked out of my room. The house was quiet. I could hear the distant, canned laughter from a sitcom in Vivian's office. Every object I looked at seemed tainted. The polished floors, the silk flower arrangements, the gleaming new appliances. It was all evidence. Vivian emerged from her office, holding a mug of tea. She saw me standing in the hallway, and her face broke into that brilliant, concerned smile. "Marley, darling, you look exhausted. You're just working too hard taking care of your grandfather. You are a saint." I looked at her, really looked at her. The concern in her eyes, the gentle tilt of her head. It was all a lie. Every kind word, every pat on the arm, every sympathetic sigh was a tool to keep me docile while she tried to ruin my life. That smile was not a greeting. It was a warning, and I knew, with the cold certainty of a proven case, that the woman who was willing to forge my name would not hesitate to do much. Much worse to keep her secret. The digital campaign began on a Monday. I was in Edgar's room, changing the dressing on a pressure sore on his heel, when my phone chimed on the nightstand. It was a Facebook notification. Vivian Rhodes had tagged me in a post. My stomach did a slow, cold roll. I tapped the screen. The photo was bright, taken on the new stone patio. Vivian was beaming, her hair perfect, her hand resting proprietorially on the handle of Edgar's wheelchair. My grandfather looked small and tired, a plaid blanket tucked neatly over his lap. The caption, punctuation perfect, was nauseating. "It is such a profound blessing to spend this quality time with our beloved father. We believe in caring for our family with our whole hearts, not just with words or obligation. This is the most important and most rewarding job in the world. I stared at the image. I remembered that moment. It was yesterday. I was the one who had spent 20 minutes convincing Edgar to go outside for some sun. I was the one who had dressed him, navigated the chair over the threshold, and settled the blanket on his lap. And I was the one who had taken the photograph. Vivian had appeared at the last second, phone in hand. "Oh, this is lovely. Marley, grab a quick picture for me, will you? Just get a good angle." I looked at the left edge of the frame. I could see it. The cuff of my gray sweatshirt, the one I had been wearing. She had cropped me out. I was the invisible force, the stagehand for her performance of sainthood. I scrolled down. The comments were already pouring in. "Vivian, you are an angel. Your father is so lucky to have you. Such an inspiration. Your heart is so big." I clicked on her profile. It was a deluge, a photo of her holding a spoon to Edgar's mouth. "He just loves his soup." He hated that soup. I had made him scrambled eggs 2 hours later. A photo of her reading him the newspaper. Though she was just scanning the headlines, in every shot, I was either absent, or a disembodied hand in the corner, or a blur in the background. I was the help. A few days later, the second strike. This one was a wide shot. Vivian and my father, Alan, standing in front of the house. They were arm in arm, smiling. The house looked magnificent in the late afternoon light, a testament to wealth and stability. The caption was aimed like a rifle. "We are so incredibly grateful for this beautiful home that Alan's father provided for our family. We work every day to honor that gift and the trust he placed in us. We just hope the next generation learns the true meaning of gratitude." The next generation. Me. It was not a hint. It was an indictment. Posted for hundreds of mutual friends, distant relatives, and community members to see. She was not just building a case for the banks. She was building a public case against me. And it worked. The audience she was cultivating began to respond. The first message came from my great-aunt Carol, my father's cousin, who lived in Oregon. "Marley, honey, I have been seeing Vivian's beautiful posts. It is so wonderful what she is doing for Edgar. I heard you were home. I hope you are doing everything you can to help her. She is under so much stress. Dear, please do not be difficult." I did not know how to respond. Be difficult? The next message was from a man named Mr. Henderson, an elder at the church Vivian had recently joined. "Young lady, I feel compelled to reach out. Your stepmother is a saint, a true pillar of this community. The way she has opened her home and heart to your grandfather, the Lord sees that. You are in a position to be a great comfort or a great burden. I pray you choose the former." The ground felt like it was tilting beneath my feet. She was poisoning the well, turning my entire social circle against me before I had even spoken a word. Then came the one that made my blood run cold. It was from a second cousin, someone I had not seen in 5 years. "Hey, Marley, this is awkward, but I am hearing some weird stuff. My mom was talking to Aunt Carol. What is going on? I heard you will not sign some basic papers to help manage Grandpa's finances. Vivian is apparently just trying to pay his bills, and you are blocking her. You are stressing everyone out. What is your deal? Do not be selfish. Marley, it is not a good look." I dropped the phone on my bed. My hands were shaking. She had told them. She had preemptively distributed her version of the story. The narrative was set. I was not the protector. I was the obstacle. I was the cold, ungrateful, selfish granddaughter who was, for some cruel and inexplicable reason, impeding the saintly Vivian from helping the family. She was discrediting the witness before the trial even began. If I spoke up now, if I showed them the fraudulent LLC filing, if I told them about the credit applications, who would they believe? Me, the strange and cold recluse, or the woman who posted daily photos of her angelic bedside manner? I had to get out of the house. The air was thick, cloying, like breathing in her perfume. I grabbed my keys and drove to the Riverton Grind, the main coffee shop in our small downtown, I just needed to be around normal people, to drink a simple cup of black coffee, and remember the world was not contained within those manicured walls. I stood in line, my hood pulled up, staring at the pastry case, and I heard it, that high, musical laugh, not Vivian's, but one of her flock. "I just do not know how Vivian Rhodes does it," a woman's voice said, sharp and clear, from a table near the window. I froze. I saw them, a cluster of 3 women, all in expensive athleisure. Their blowouts perfect. Vivian's inner circle. She was not even with them, but her script was. "I know," another woman chimed in, leaning forward conspiratorially. "She is managing that whole house, Alan's business, and now Edgar full-time. She is a miracle worker, and apparently, the granddaughter is back." The first woman sighed dramatically. "Oh, I heard. The one from Texas. Beth from the club said Vivian told her the girl is difficult, very strange. Apparently she complains about living in that gorgeous house, rent-free. Can you even imagine?" A third woman scoffed, loud enough for half the cafe to hear. "Please, that girl hit the lottery. Having a rich grandfather like Edgar Lane, she should be on her knees, scrubbing the floors in gratitude, not causing trouble for Vivian. What a snake in the grass." I turned and walked out. I did not order. I sat in my car, my face burning as if I had been slapped. It was done. The story was told. I was the villain of Riverton. When I returned, Vivian was in the kitchen, arranging flowers. She saw my face, saw the red flush on my cheeks, the tightness in my jaw. She knew. She could smell the isolation on me. She smiled, a sweet, sympathetic smile. "Marley, darling, you look terribly upset. Is everything all right?" I just looked at her, the audacity. "Why are you telling people I am ungrateful, Vivian?" She put a hand to her chest, her face a perfect mask of shock and hurt. "What? Oh, Marley, never. I would never say such a thing. I tell everyone how wonderful it is to have you here, to have the family together. We are a family, darling." She stepped closer, lowering her voice to that intimate, syrupy tone she used when she was delivering a payload. "And family is about sharing, Marley, sharing the burdens, sharing the blessings. We all have to do our part." She turned, idly wiping a speck of pollen from the marble counter. "You know," she mused, as if the thought had just struck her, "at the end of the day, you cannot take any of this money with you. All that really matters in this life is how you treated the people who loved you." She looked up, her eyes meeting mine. The smile was still there, but her gaze was as cold and hard as the stone beneath her hand. "It is just such a shame. Not everyone understands that." There it was, the threat, wrapped in a Hallmark card. I was the one who did not understand. I was the one failing the sacred test of family. The final tool in her psychological arsenal was my father. He was weak, and she used his weakness like a cudgel. He found me that night, knocking softly on my bedroom door. He looked awful. His eyes were bloodshot, his skin gray. He was wringing his hands, a gesture I remembered from my childhood, right before he had to tell my mother he had lost money on another sure thing. "Marley," he whispered, not meeting my eyes. "Honey, can we talk?" I stepped into the hall. He kept his voice low, terrified of her overhearing. "Listen," he started. Your stepmother, Vivian, she is under an incredible amount of stress. This whole thing with Edgar, it is a lot for her to manage. She is just trying to keep this whole family afloat." "What do you want, Dad?" I asked, my voice flat. "This paperwork, the authorization she mentioned, Marley, it is just a formality. It is nothing. It is just to help us manage things, pay the bills, keep things smooth until your grandfather is back on his feet." "It is fraud, Dad. She is applying for credit in my name." He flinched, a physical recoil, and looked frantically down the empty hallway. Do not say that. Do not use those words. It is not like that. It is just family helping family, an internal arrangement. She is forging my name." "Marley, please," his voice cracked. a desperate, pathetic sound. Just sign it. Just sign the papers and make this go away. You are stressing her out. You are stressing me out. I do not want this family to blow up. He finally looked at me, his eyes wet with tears of self-pity. Please, just sign it. For me. I looked at my father, the man who was supposed to run an empire, begging his daughter to co-sign his ruin. He was not a monster. He was just a coward, terrified of his wife, terrified of being poor, terrified of the truth. I said nothing. I walked back into my room and closed the door. What could I say? I could not fight this war on her terms. I am an investigator. My currency is proof, data, and hard evidence. I cannot win in the court of public opinion, a game of whispers, innuendo, and staged photographs. Vivian's entire life was a performance of public relations. I would lose before I even began. I did not post a rebuttal on Facebook. I did not send Aunt Carol the PDF of the fraudulent LLC filing. I did not text my cousin back. I did not confront Vivian's friends at the coffee shop. I went silent. I continued my work. I cared for Edgar. I changed his bandages. I checked his blood pressure. I logged his medication. I documented everything. And in the small, insular, networked world of Riverton, my silence was not seen as dignity. It was seen as an admission. It was interpreted exactly as Vivian had engineered it to be. It was proof of guilt. I was completely, utterly isolated. I was the ungrateful, difficult niece. I was the snake in the grass. I was trapped in this beautiful, expensive house, surrounded by people who smiled at me while they passed judgment, all because I refused to be the scapegoat for a crime I did not commit. The walls were closing in, and I knew Vivian well enough to know what happened when she felt cornered. Her public campaign was just the prelude. The real attack was yet to come. The isolation was a physical weight. It made the house smaller, the air thinner. I was trapped in the narrative Vivian had built, and my silence was her proof. I spent 2 days in a cold fog, mechanically performing my duties for Edgar. My mind racing, sorting through the failed credit applications, the Facebook posts, the whispers in the coffee shop. I was an investigator with a pile of evidence but no one to show it to, no court to file it in. On the third night, my old team leader from Harborline, a man named Kenji, called me for a Zoom catch-up. He and a few others from the old team were on screen, drinking beers, swapping war stories about recent cases. "Marley, my God, you look like a ghost," Kenji said, his image pixelating slightly. "I thought you were on vacation, not in solitary confinement. What is going on out there?" I kept my camera off. I pleaded a bad connection. I gave them the thinnest version of the story. Family stuff. It is complicated. My grandfather is sick. Kenji, who could read a 5-page legal document and find the single lie in it, was not fooled. "Marley, I have known you for 8 years. Complicated is what you call a multi-million-dollar embezzlement scheme. This sounds bad." Another colleague, Sarah, chimed in. "Is it money? It is always money." I did not confirm or deny. I just said, "I do not know how to fight this. It is all words," he said. She said, "Public opinion." Kenji's voice turned hard, the voice he used when he was briefing us before a hostile interview. "Then you are using the wrong weapons. Public opinion is for amateurs. You are a professional. If you smell rot, you do not argue with it. You document it. You log it. You get it on camera. You pull the emails. You build a case so ironclad that by the time you present it, there is nothing left for them to say. Do not let this live in your head. Marley, get it on a timeline. Get it on a hard drive." The call ended. I sat in the dark in my room for a long time. He was right. I had been acting like a granddaughter. I needed to start acting like an investigator. My first move was to assess my own surveillance, the Stonebridge monitoring system. I opened my laptop and typed in the IP address for the house's local server. A login portal appeared. I tried the obvious admin passwords. Nothing. I tried Alan's birthday, Vivian's, their anniversary, All access denied. I went to Edgar's room. He was dozing, the TV muttering about the weather. I quietly accessed his desktop. His passwords were, bless his heart, taped to the underside of his desk drawer. Old school. I logged into the Stonebridge portal as a lane admin. The system opened up. It was beautiful. Full access. I clicked on user management. My breath hitched. There were 3 accounts. Elaine admin. Full control. Arhode's user. View only. Access limited to exterior cameras and main hallway. VR Hode's user. View only. Access limited to exterior cameras, main hallway, and kitchen. Vivian had been given access to the kitchen camera, the one she thought was her tool to monitor the staff. But she and my father were limited viewers. They could watch, but they could not delete. They could not change settings. They could not see the access logs. And they could not see the other cameras, the ones in Edgar's suite, in his office, or the one covering his safe. He had played them. He had given them a toy to make them feel powerful, while he kept the real keys. But I could not use his account. The system logged every action. If they somehow got access, they would see Elaine admin had been reviewing footage, downloading files. They would blame him, or worse, they would know he was more lucid than they believed. I needed my own key. I picked up my phone. I had a friend, an old contact, really, from a corporate security conference. He was a senior tech at Stonebridge Monitoring. His name was Ben. I texted him, "Hey Ben, strange request. I am in Riverton, CO, doing private care for my grandfather, Edgar Lane. He's a client of yours. He's sharp, but his hands are weak. He wants to grant me caregiver support access to his system, admin level, so I can check the tapes for him and manage his settings. He is legally competent to make the request. What is the protocol for that?" Marley Roads, Harbor Line. 9. I added the Harbor Line part deliberately. It was professional shorthand. It meant I am not a hysterical family member. I am one of you. He replied in 10 minutes. Roads? No kidding. Small world. Yeah, I see the Lane account. Big one. The protocol is simple. He just needs to sign a simple authorization form. I can email it to you. You scan it back with a copy of his driver's license, and I can have the account active in an hour. I'll code it as caregiver support, and it will not trigger an email notification to the other users on the account. Perfect, I texted back. He is right here. Send it over. The next morning, I sat with Edgar. Grandpa, I need to show you something. I did not show him the LLC. I did not show him the credit reports. I did not want to send his blood pressure soaring. I showed him something simpler. Vivian has been posting photos of you, saying she is your primary caregiver, I said gently. She is also telling relatives that I'm making her life difficult. He grunted. She is a peacock. Always has been. All feathers. I know, but I need to be able to protect both of us. The camera system. I need my own login. I need to be able to see what she sees and what she does not. I explained the plan, the account, the signature. A cold, familiar light entered his eyes, the light I remembered from when he was negotiating a lumber deal, the CEO light. She thinks I am a potted plant, he said, his voice quiet. He grabbed the pen. Give me the damn paper. His signature was shaky, but it was his. I scanned it, sent it to Ben, and by noon, Marhode's US support was live, full admin access. That night, I fell down the rabbit hole. I was no longer a caretaker. I was back at Harbor Line, building my case. I sat in my room, laptop glowing, and I watched. I watched weeks of footage. I saw Vivian, standing in the kitchen, talking to the housekeeper, Maria. I know. She is just so critical, Vivian said, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. She just sits in her room, on her computer. I am the one running this house, running Edgar's life, and she just watches. It is very cold. I saw my father, standing in the hallway, as Vivian raged. She will not sign. Alan, she is blocking us. What if Henderson calls the loan? What if they audit the accounts? And I saw my father, my dad, just sigh, rub his face, and say, Just be nice to her. Viv, try to be nice. He was a collaborator through his own cowardice. I saw Vivian, late at night, in Edgar's room. He was asleep, the soft rasp of his breath audible on the audio. She was not fluffing pillows. She was opening drawers. She quietly, methodically, went through his nightstand, through his desk. She was looking for something, checkbooks, a will, keys. I watched, and the pain in my chest solidified into something cold, hard, and sharp. This was not a family dispute. This was a long con. But I saw something else. I saw the blind spots. The system was designed to catch external threats or monitor a patient in bed. It was not designed to catch a conspiracy in the kitchen. The main kitchen camera gave a wide view. But the pantry was a deep, narrow closet. The moment that door closed, it was a black hole. Audio was muffled. Video was non-existent. Vivian knew this. She used the pantry for her most toxic phone calls. She used it when she was berating the caterers. It was her safe room. And that was her mistake. She assumed a blind spot was permanent. I was trained to illuminate them. I went online. I spent $150 on a piece of technology that was illegal in some states for surveillance, but perfectly legal for home security. It was a micro camera, a high-definition lens and microphone built into the face of a standard, 3-prong electrical outlet. It arrived 2 days later in a discreet Amazon box. That afternoon, when Vivian was at her book club and my father was at the golf course, I went to the kitchen. My hands were shaking, but not from fear, from adrenaline. The outlet was perfect, set low on the wall, about 10 feet from the pantry. It had a clear, wide-angle view of the pantry door and the main kitchen workspace. I turned off the circuit breaker. I unscrewed the old plate. I wired the new one in. It took me less than 10 minutes. I flipped the breaker back on. A tiny, almost invisible pinprick of light flashed blue, then went dark. It was online, connected to its own secure cloud storage, accessible only from my phone. As I screwed in the final plate, I was aware of the line I was crossing. I was no longer a passive con in my grandfather's house. I was actively running counter-surveillance on my own family. I was treating my stepmother and father like corporate criminals. The thought made me sick, but the alternative, letting them frame me, letting them steal from Edgar, letting them destroy my life, was worse. In this house, words were lies. Only the raw footage would be the truth. The camera was not my only tool. I started recording audio. I used the voice memo app on my phone. When my father came to my room again, begging me to sign the papers, I recorded it. I placed my phone on the desk, screen down. "Dad," I said, my voice clear for the microphone, "are you asking me to sign a power of attorney I have not read, for a company I do not know, so Vivian can get a line of credit in my name?" His recorded reply was a desperate, damning whisper. Do not say it like that. Marley, it is not like that. It is just, please, just do it." Click, save, encrypt. I compiled everything. The bank documents, the LLC filing, the credit reports, the exported, time-stamped video files from the Stonebridge system of Vivian snooping, the audio file of my father. I put it all on a single, encrypted micro SD card. Then I put that card on a small, fireproof hard drive. I had a complete, undeniable package of evidence. Now I had to hide it. I could not keep it on me. Vivian, I now realized, was capable of searching my room. I could not keep it in my car. It had to be secure. I went to Edgar's room. He was in the living room, watching the news. I went to his private, attached bathroom. It was full of his things. Old-fashioned aftershave, pill bottles, gauze. Vivian never came in here. The nurses and I handled his hygiene. She found it distasteful. I knelt. I pulled out the bottom drawer of the medicine cabinet. Beneath it, in the empty space of the cabinet's toe kick, there was a void, a perfect, dark space. I taped the small hard drive to the underside of the cabinet floor. Deep in the back, where no hand would ever accidentally brush against it. I stood up and looked at myself in the mirror. My face was pale. My eyes looked haunted. I had just treated my father's home like a hostile corporate office and my grandfather's bathroom like a dead drop. The pain of it was a physical ache. I had to use the techniques I had learned to catch hardened criminals on the people I was supposed to love. I thought about leaving. I thought about just packing my car, taking Edgar with me, and driving away. But I could not. He was still too fragile to move without a full medical team, and more than that, he still, somehow, believed in his son. He believed that if he just sat everyone down, family would win out. He thought Alan and Vivian would, in the end, do the right thing. I did not have the heart to show him the hard drive and tell him that the right thing had left the building months ago. So I waited. I had my evidence. I had my defenses. I had my secret. Watching eye. I did not know when I would use it. I did not know how I would use it. I just knew that the next time Vivian tried to corner me, she would not be in a blind spot. I never imagined the next time would be a physical assault. I never imagined she would be so stupid as to attack me in the one place I was most prepared to see her. And I never, ever imagined that my supposedly weak, frail grandfather would be 10 miles away, watching the whole thing live, his hand on the phone to his lawyer, becoming the most powerful ally I ever had, to the world, and even to his own family. Edgar Lane had become a prop. Since the stroke, he was treated less like a man and more like a piece of valuable, fragile furniture. He was rolled from room to room, fed, cleaned, and spoken about rather than to. His son, Alan, would pat his shoulder and speak too loudly, as if the stroke had made him deaf. His daughter-in-law, Vivian, would coo at him, calling him sweetheart while checking her watch over his head. They had all, in their own way, begun his funeral. They were treating him like a living statue, a silent monument to the money they hoped to inherit. Their profound collective mistake was in assuming his body's weakness had infected his mind. His mind was a steel trap. It was the same mind that had built a multi-state warehousing empire from nothing. The stroke had slurred his speech and weakened his left side, but it had not touched the core of him. And the core of Edgar Lane was built on one principle: watch everything. He observed, from the quiet prison of his wheelchair. He saw it all. He saw the way Vivian's smile would snap off the instant she left his room. He saw her intercept the mail, signing for certified letters addressed to him, murmuring, "Oh, it is just small household papers. Edgar, do not you worry." He knew there was no such thing as small papers. Edgar had run warehouses for 50 years. His entire business was built on surveillance. He knew that employees who thought they were watched stayed honest. He trusted camera footage infinitely more than he trusted human explanations. When he agreed to move into Alan's house, he did not just request cameras. He designed the system. He had Stonebridge Monitoring, his corporate security provider for 2 decades, install the network. He let Vivian think she had control. He gave her and Alan viewer access to a few cameras, a little toy to make them feel powerful. He knew Vivian would use it to terrorize the housekeeping staff, and he did not care. His own access, however, was total. He had a private, encrypted portal, accessible from the high-resolution television in his room and his private tablet. He kept this a secret. He told no one, not even Marley. He watched them. He watched them all. He spent his long, silent afternoons reviewing the footage. It was better than daytime television. He saw Vivian, after smiling and kissing Marley on the cheek, follow her down the hall and glare at her back with a look of pure, unadulterated venom. He saw her, in the kitchen, pick up a plate the housekeeper had just cleaned, run a finger under the rim, show it to the poor woman, and berate her in a whisper so cold it made his skin crawl. He saw her, late at night, slipping into his private office, the one she thought was locked. He watched her open his desk drawers, her gloved fingers, gloved, the audacity, sifting through his papers, looking for his will, his private bank statements. She found nothing. He had moved all essential documents to Martin Sawyer's office vault the day before he was discharged from the hospital. And he watched Marley. He saw his granddaughter arrive, her face etched with the same burnout he had seen in his best executives. He saw her, at 3 a.m, alerted by the medical monitor, come into his room to adjust his pillow. He watched her patiently cleaning his wounds, logging every pill, every blood pressure reading, in a worn notebook. He saw her sit by his bed, not on her phone, but just watching him breathe, her expression a mix of love and profound sadness. Most importantly, he saw what she did not do. She never opened his desk. She never looked at his mail. She never once, in all those months, brought up money. She never asked about the will. She never complained about her father or her stepmother. She just cared. His trust in her, already solid, became absolute. So when the request came from Stonebridge, forwarded by Martin, that Marley Rhodes be granted an administrative account, Edgar had not hesitated. He had called Martin personally. "This account for Marley," he had rasped, his voice stronger than Alan had heard it in months. "Is it all access? Can she see everything I see?" "Yes, Edgar," Martin had replied. "Full admin privileges. She can pull logs, download files, everything." "Good," Edgar said, and signed the paper Marley had brought him. "Give it to her. The girl needs tools to protect herself in that snake pit." He knew something was wrong, long before the pantry. He saw the tension in his son, the frantic, hushed phone calls Vivian would take on the patio, her back rigid. He recognized the smell of financial desperation. He had seen it in dozens of failing business partners over the years. Vivian was preparing something, some kind of move on his assets. He did not intervene. It was not time. He had no proof. Just footage of her being a tyrant and a snoop. That was not enough to break a power of attorney or contest a legal filing. A person like Vivian, convinced of her own brilliance, convinced he was a vegetable, would not stop. She would escalate. She would get greedy. She would get sloppy. And when she did, he would be watching. He knew, with the certainty of a lifelong predator, that she would eventually make a fatal mistake. That Saturday morning, he was not watching the live feed. He was in his room at Lanecrest, reviewing archived footage from the night before. He was building his own case against Vivian for her abuse of the housekeeping staff, intending to have Maria transferred to another family property with double her pay. He was watching Vivian berate the young woman for leaving a spoon in the sink when a small, red alert flashed in the corner of his screen. Motion detected, unusual. Zone, kitchen, source, cam 07, kitchen outlet. He frowned. He did not have a camera labeled kitchen outlet. Then he remembered. The girl, Marley, she had installed her own device. He had seen the Stonebridge log showing a new, unidentified device joining the network on her credentials, and had simply smiled. Good girl, he had thought, just like her grandfather. He tapped the remote, switching to the feed from SAM 07. The view was low, sharp. He saw the kitchen floor, the leg of the island, the pantry door. He saw Vivian, her back to the camera, pulling Marley into the pantry. He saw the door slam shut. The audio was clear, not muffled. Marley's device was good. He heard the argument. He heard power of attorney. He heard sign it. He heard his granddaughter's voice, firm and clear. "I am Edgar's granddaughter. I am not your debtor." And then he saw it. He saw Vivian grab his granddaughter's hair. He saw her slam Marley's face into the steel shelving. Edgar Lane stopped breathing. He watched, frozen, as the scene devolved into pure, vicious violence. He saw the shoves. He heard the sickening, wet crack of a hand across a face. He saw Marley fall, disappearing behind the doorframe. He heard Vivian's ragged, screaming voice. "You will sign it!" A lifetime of curated, controlled anger, the cold anger of the boardroom, the frustrated anger of a father, the weary anger of an old man, coalesced into a single point of white-hot, diamond-hard rage. The feeling was so intense it almost cleared his head. He felt a moment of profound guilt. I let this happen. I waited too long, followed by a cold, absolute resolve. She had done it. She had made her fatal, sloppy mistake. He slowly, with a steady hand, hit the rewind button. He watched the entire 30-second sequence again. He hit pause at the exact moment Vivian's hand was raised, her face a mask of pure, unambiguous malice. He hit the zoom button. The image clarified. It was perfect. It was undeniable. He picked up the secure phone by his bed. He did not call the house. He did not call Alan. He called the only man he had trusted for half a century. Martin Sawyer answered. "Edgar?" "Get to Lanecrest," Edgar said. His voice was not the reedy rasp of a patient. It was the voice that had fired 1,000 men and built an empire. "Get here now!" "What is it? What is wrong?" "Bring a portable hard drive and call Stonebridge. I want a certified technician, one of their best forensic guys, to meet you here. Tell him to bring a secure download kit." "Edgar, what has happened?" Edgar looked at the frozen image on his screen. Vivian, triumphant and monstrous, Marley, unseen, on the floor. "It is over, Martin," he said. "They are done." He hung up. He put the phone down. He knew no one from the house would call him. Vivian was too consumed by her rage, Alan by his cowardice, and Marley by her survival. He had a window. He formulated the plan. It was simple. It was brutal. It was clean. This was no longer a messy family argument to be solved with tears and apologies. This was not a private disagreement. Vivian had crossed the line. She had committed assault. She had confessed to attempted fraud on a live microphone. And Edgar Lane, the living statue, was going to use that footage to tear her world apart. He was not going to have a family meeting. He was going to hold a deposition. When Martin and the terrified-looking young technician from Stonebridge arrived 40 minutes later, Edgar had a cover story ready. "Testing new medical monitoring equipment," he told the nurses. "Lawyer needs to verify the data security for my insurance." He had them lock the door. "Edgar, my God, you look—" "What is this?" Martin said. "Shut up, Martin, and sit down." Edgar pointed the remote at the screen. "You are my lawyer. The technician is your agent. I am showing you evidence of a crime committed against my granddaughter, in my son's home, related directly to the attempted fraudulent acquisition of my assets. I want every second of footage from all cameras, from 8 a.m. this morning until now, downloaded and certified, and I want it all." He hit play. Martin Sawyer, a man who had seen the worst of corporate litigation, went pale. The technician looked like he was going to be sick. "Get it," Edgar commanded, his eyes never leaving the screen. He watched the progress bar as the technician worked, downloading the footage from the Stonebridge servers and from Marley's own secret cloud. He was taking it all. Vivian thought the camera was her weapon of control. She thought Edgar was a senile old man in a chair. She had forgotten who had paid for the cameras. She had forgotten who owned the house, and she had forgotten, in her arrogant, greedy rush, who was, and always would be, the man in charge. I left the house through the garage, my cheek a throbbing map of purple and yellow. I did not tell Alan or Vivian where I was going. My car felt like the only safe territory I had left. I met Martin Sawyer in the private conference room at the Lanecrest Center. Edgar was already there, wheeled in by a nurse who then quietly shut the door, leaving the three of us alone. The Stonebridge technician had already been there and gone. All that remained of his visit was a single, matte black hard drive sitting in the center of the polished conference table. It looked small, almost anticlimactic. Martin, a man in his late 60s, who wore his pinstripe suit like armor, did not waste time on pleasantries. He plugged the drive into his laptop. He turned the screen so both Edgar and I could see it. "First," he said, his voice crisp, "the pantry." He hit play. I had to force myself to watch. There it was, in high definition, from two different angles, the argument, the shove, the sickening crack of her hand against my face, my body slamming into the metal shelves. Martin did not flinch, but I saw the muscles in his jaw bunch, He paused the footage at the apex of Vivian's rage, her face a mask of pure malice. He rewound it and watched the impact again. He did not comment on the violence. He simply opened a yellow legal pad and began to write. Timestamp: 9:14 a.m. Event: physical assault, closed fist, followed by battery. Perpetrator: Vivian Rhodes. Victim: Marley Rhodes. He was a clinician dissecting a disease. Next, he played the other files, the ones my own camera had captured, the ones I had recorded. He played the audio of Vivian's late-night calls. The old man won't sign. Her voice, thin and metallic, filled the sterile room. But the niece will, she trusts me. He played the clip of her, late at night, in Edgar's office, her hands in gloves, rifling through his desk. Finally, he played the audio I had recorded of my father. Marley, please, just sign it. You're stressing her out. It's not like that. Just be soft. Please, for me. Martin stopped the playback. He closed the laptop. The hard drive sat between us. A silent bomb. Well, Martin said, his voice clipped and dry. They are comprehensively and spectacularly caught. Edgar, who had been watching with a terrifying, frozen stillness, finally spoke. What are our options, Martin? Broadly, 2, Martin said, steepling his fingers. Option 1, we go public. I take this drive to the Riverton Police Department. Marley files a report for assault. I contact the state's attorney general regarding the multiple counts of attempted wire fraud, bank fraud, and identity theft. I alert the banks. It will be an absolute detonation. Vivian will be arrested. The Riverton Gazette will have it on the front page by Tuesday. And your father, Alan, will be implicated as a knowing accomplice. I winced. The thought of my father's mugshot next to hers. The humiliation. Option 2, Martin continued, is the private route. We do not go to the police. Not yet. We use this evidence as leverage. We force them into a settlement, a quiet divorce, a non-disclosure agreement, a restructuring of the estate. It is cleaner. It keeps the family name out of the mud. Edgar looked at me. His old eyes were not weak. They were sharp. He is your father, Marley, but this is your name they stole. Your face she hit. The choice is yours. What do you want? I thought about it. I thought about the public humiliation, the whispers in the coffee shop, the Facebook posts. Part of me wanted to burn them to the ground. I wanted Vivian dragged out in handcuffs. But then I thought of Edgar, and I thought of the weak, terrified man who was my father. What would be left after the fire? I don't want revenge, I said, my voice hoarse. Revenge is just more noise. I want it to stop. I want to know that I am safe, and that Grandpa's assets are safe, and that they can never, ever use my name, or his, or this family, as a weapon again. I want them disarmed, permanently. A thin, satisfied smile touched Martin's lips. Good. A much better strategy. Revenge is emotional. Disarming them is structural. If we go public, they fight back. They lie. They play the victim. They drag you through the legal mud for years. But if we move privately, and decisively, we cut them off at the source. How? I asked. We act first, Martin said. Before they even know we have this drive, we do not ask. We do not negotiate. We change the locks. This afternoon, I will draft documents that immediately and irrevocably revoke every single power of attorney, every fiduciary access, and all signatory rights that Alan Rhodes and Vivian Rhodes have ever possessed related to the Lane estate. Edgar nodded, gripping the arm of his wheelchair. Not just revoke, Martin. I want a new trust, an ironclad, irrevocable trust, effective immediately. I want Marley as co-trustee. Martin raised an eyebrow. Edgar, that is a significant move. She would be managing the entire estate. She is the only one who didn't try to, Edgar rasped. Her and a third-party corporate trustee. A bank, 2 keys, both must turn to unlock anything. Alan and Vivian are out, completely, of everything. I'll have it drawn up by 5 p.m., Martin said, already making notes. And add a new clause, Edgar continued, his voice dropping to a cold rumble. A betrayal clause. You make the language legal, Martin. But this is what it means. If either Alan or Vivian are found, by the trustees, to have engaged in any further acts of financial malfeasance, fraud, or physical violence, their portion of the inheritance, whatever I've allotted them, is immediately nullified. 100%? It defaults to the Lane Veterans Foundation. I stared at him. This was not a shield. This was a fortress with cannons. They'll fight it, I whispered. They'll go to court. Alan will claim, I don't know, that you're not competent, that I'm manipulating you. Edgar actually smiled. It was the first time I had seen him smile in months, and it was the most terrifying expression I had ever witnessed. Let them, he said. Let Alan hire a lawyer. Let him demand an accounting. Let him scream to a judge. This is what my son, in his infinite weakness, has never understood. He leaned forward, his voice a low growl. I built an empire because I do not trust anyone with my money. Least of all, him. He thinks my wealth is in a few stocks and the checking account he gets his allowance from. He thinks he is just waiting for me to die. Martin nodded, picking up the thread. Edgar has been suspicious of Alan's spending for more than a decade. Marley, the vast majority of the Lane estate, well over 90% of it, has been locked in a generation-skipping trust since 2010. Alan can't touch it. He never could. All he was ever going to inherit was the house and a modest stipend. What Vivian has been fighting for, what she assaulted you for, was a handful of scraps. She was trying to defraud an account that I, personally, empty every 30 days. I was stunned. All this, the fraud, the violence, the risk, for nothing. Then why are we doing this? I asked. Why not just tell them? Because they don't know, Edgar said. And because a rot, Marley, must be cut out, not just ignored. They need to know they've been seen. Which brings us, Martin said, to the event. We cannot just mail these new documents. They will contest them, as you said. They will claim incompetence. They will claim undue influence from you. No, we must have a formal unveiling, a moment of truth, witnessed and recorded. He laid out the trap. He would call a family meeting at the house, the stated purpose, an official update on Edgar's estate planning and will, post-stroke, a common, boring, legal procedure. Vivian, Martin said, his voice dry, will believe she is coming to hear herself named the new executor. Alan will come because he is terrified not to. And then what? I asked, my stomach turning to ice. We will have guests, Martin said. I will be there, and I will bring an associate, a woman named Nora Blake. She is a representative from the county's Adult Protective Services and Victim Advocacy. She will be there as a legal consultant, an official witness. And, Edgar said, we will show the film. The thought of being in the same room as Vivian, of watching her watch that, I felt dizzy. I do not know if I can. I do not want to face her. What if she explodes? What if she attacks me again? She will not, Martin said. Not in front of me and a state advocate. I took a deep breath. My investigator's mind pushed the fear down. I'll do it, but on one condition. I want Stonebridge there. I want Noah Briggs, the tech who helped you, or someone just like him, in the room. I want him running the presentation. I do not want a laptop on a coffee table. I want it hardwired to the main television, controlled by a professional, with a backup. I will not have her or my father lunge for the computer and stop it. It has to be seen, all of it. Excellent, Martin said, writing it down. Secured playback, Noah Briggs, done. We will set it for tomorrow afternoon, 2 p.m., in Edgar's parlor. The plan was set. I drove back to the house, my mind buzzing with a terrible, cold adrenaline. That evening, Edgar made the call. I was in the kitchen, wiping down a counter I had already cleaned, when I saw Vivian answer her phone. Edgar, sweetheart, what a surprise. Her voice was pure honey. I watched her face. Her eyes widened. She put a hand to her chest. Tomorrow? At 2? Oh, of course. A family meeting. To discuss the future. Her eyes lit up, a greedy, ecstatic gleam. Yes, Martin will be there. How wonderful. How proper. Yes, Alan and I will be there. We would not miss it for the world. She hung up, her face flushed with triumph. She looked right at me, across the marble island, a victorious, pitying smirk playing on her lips. Your grandfather, she announced, has finally decided to get his affairs in order. It is about time. She thought this was her coronation. She thought she had won. The second call came an hour later. This time to my cell. It was my father. He sounded, as he always did, like a man begging for his life. Marley, he whispered. He was clearly in the garage or a closet. I just heard about the meeting tomorrow. With Martin. Yes. Listen. Your grandfather. He listens to you. I just need you to be gentle, okay? Your stepmother, Vivian, she has been under so much pressure. This whole thing. Just be soft. Do not make waves. Marley, don't stress her out. This is a very big day for us. For us, the us that had been forging my name. The us that had left me bleeding on a pantry floor. I will not be making any waves, Dad, I said, my voice as cold and flat as the hard drive in my bag. I will just be there to hear the truth. That is all. I hung up. That night, I did not sleep. I sat on my bed, the door locked, and stared at the wall. I was terrified. The thought of facing them, of the inevitable explosion, made my hands tremble. But underneath the fear was something else, a cold, quiet current I had not felt in months. It was the feeling I used to get at Harbor Line, right before a major takedown. The feeling of holding all the evidence. For the first time since I had come home, I was not the victim. I was not the scapegoat. I was not the difficult niece. I was the primary witness, and I had the evidence, for the first time, in this entire house of lies. I was the only one who did not have to pretend. I just had to show up, at exactly 2 p.m. The players assembled in Edgar's grand parlor. It was a room designed not for comfort, but for statements. Dark mahogany walls, leather-bound books that had never been read, oversized leather chairs, and a thick Persian rug that seemed to absorb all sound. The air smelled of old money, lemon oil, and a faint, stale trace of cigar smoke from a decade ago. At the far end of the room, dominating the wall, was a massive, dark, silent television screen. Vivian was the last to enter, a masterpiece of calculated performance. She was dressed in a soft, cream-colored cashmere set, her hair perfectly blown out. She carried a silver tray, upon which sat a homemade lemon pound cake, sliced and fanned out. She was the picture of the dutiful daughter-in-law, the gracious hostess in a house that was not hers. Oh, good. Everyone is here, she chirped, her voice echoing slightly in the heavy silence. She placed the cake on the sideboard. I baked this morning. I just thought we could all use a little something. My father, Alan, was already seated in one of the heavy chairs. He was a wreck. He was wearing a tie he did not need, and he kept fumbling with the knot, pulling it too tight, then loosening it. His face was pale, a grayish, chalky color, and a fine film of sweat glistened on his upper lip. He looked like a man about to be audited, or perhaps a man walking to his own execution. I came in last. I wore simple, dark jeans and a plain black sweater. I carried my own laptop bag. Vivian's eyes flicked to the bag, and a cold, condescending smile touched her lips. Marley, darling, she said, just loud enough for everyone to hear. Are you bringing homework? Or is that more evidence? She laughed, a high, brittle sound. Just my notes, I said, my voice flat. I took a seat on the far side of the room, near the door. She did not notice, or perhaps chose to ignore, that the room was not just family. Martin Sawyer, my grandfather's lawyer, sat at the head of the conference table, his leather briefcase open, a stack of bound documents in front of him. But he was not alone. In the corner, by the large television, sat a man in a black polo shirt with a small Stonebridge monitoring logo embroidered on the chest. This was Noah Briggs, the technician. He was not looking at anyone, just at his own laptop, which was connected by a thick cable to the television's main port. And sitting near Martin, in a chair set slightly apart, was a woman I did not know. She was in her mid-40s, with a calm, observant face and neatly pinned hair. She wore a simple professional blue dress and held a plain leather portfolio on her lap. She had the unmistakable, patient aura of someone who could not be fooled, lied to, or intimidated. This had to be Nora Blake. Vivian's gracious hostess mask flickered. Her eyes narrowed at the two strangers. "Martin," she said, her voice losing its sugary edge. "I was not aware we would be having guests. I thought this was a family meeting." Right on cue. A nurse wheeled my grandfather in. Edgar was dressed in a crisp shirt and trousers, not a hospital gown. He looked frail, but his eyes were like chips of ice. The nurse positioned his chair at the head of the table, opposite Martin, and then, with a small nod to me, she left, closing the heavy parlor doors behind her. The sound of the latch clicking shut was dreadfully final. "They are not guests. Vivian." Edgar's voice was reedy, but it cut through the silence. "They are here for verification. They are here so that, later, no one can say I imagined any of this, or that I was confused." Vivian's face tightened. My father looked like he was actively shrinking into his chair. Martin cleared his throat. He put on his reading glasses and looked down at the documents in front of him. He began, his voice a perfect, legal monotone, as if he were reading the minutes of a zoning board meeting. "Thank you all for coming," he said. "We are gathered today at Mr. Lane's request. As you know, following a significant health event, it is standard and prudent practice to review and update all estate documents, wills, and active powers of attorney. Our goal here is to ensure Mr. Lane's wishes are clearly documented and that all parties are protected." Vivian could not stand it. She could not stand being a spectator. She saw the opening and she took it, jumping in with a performance of pure, calculated martyrdom. "Martin, if I may," she interrupted, her voice suddenly thick with manufactured emotion. She put a hand on Alan's shoulder, a gesture of solidarity that made my father jump. "Before we get into all the dry legal papers, I just want to say, what an honor it has been." She looked at Edgar, her eyes shining with what I assumed were well-timed, unshed tears. "This has been the hardest 6 months of our lives. Of course, the sleepless nights, the worrying, the constant care. But Alan and I, we were honored to do it. We have carried this burden gladly. We have had to make so many difficult decisions, managing the house, managing the staff, managing, well, everything, all to keep this family stable for you, Edgar." She then pivoted, turning her gaze on me. It was not hostile, it was pitying. "And Marley has been a help, of course, but she is young. She has her own life. Alan and I, we are the ones who are here. We are the ones who have sacrificed, and we just hope, whatever is in those papers, that it reflects the enormous responsibility we have shouldered." She finished, leaving her words hanging in the air. She had made her case. She was the victim. She was the saint. She was the one who deserved the keys to the kingdom. The room was thick with her self-congratulation. Martin Sawyer did not reply to her. He did not even look at her. He looked past her, past my father, to the man in the corner. He gave Noah Briggs one, single, sharp nod. Noah typed a command. The 70-inch television screen on the wall clicked on, flooding the dark room with bright, white light. The Stonebridge monitoring logo appeared, large and ominous. Vivian's smile faltered. "What is this, Martin? What is going on? Is this a security presentation? I told Alan those motion detectors on the driveway were too sensitive." The logo faded, It was replaced by a camera feed, my camera feed, the low-angle view from the kitchen outlet. The timestamp in the corner read, "Yesterday, 9:14 a.m." The room was dead silent. We were all watching the screen. We saw the kitchen. We saw the pantry door. We saw the on-screen Vivian, her back to the camera, pulling the on-screen me into the pantry. And then, the sound, crystal clear, amplified by the high-end surround sound system Edgar had installed for watching football games. "You ungrateful little bitch!" Vivian's recorded voice was a venomous hiss. My father made a small, wet gasping sound. On the screen, my own voice, firm and clear. "I am Edgar's granddaughter. I am not your debtor." And then, the violence. We saw the hair pull. We saw my head snap back. We saw her shove me, hard, out of the camera's main view. But we heard the impact. A sickening thud, followed by the metallic rattle of cans. Vivian shot to her feet. "What is this?" she screamed, her voice cracking. "This is slander. This is edited. Turn it off. Turn it off." Noah Briggs's fingers never left his keyboard. Martin held up a single hand, a gesture of absolute command. "Please sit down. Vivian, the presentation is not over." "This is private," she shrieked, her face purple. "This is a private family matter. You have no right to record me in my own home." Nora Blake, the advocate, spoke for the first time. Her voice was not loud, but it sliced through Vivian's hysteria like a surgeon's scalpel. "Ma'am," she said, looking directly at Vivian, "battery and assault, particularly when linked to a financial dispute over the assets of a vulnerable adult, is not a private family matter. It is evidence. Please, sit down." Vivian froze. She looked at Nora, truly seeing her for the first time, and the color drained from her face. She understood. She knew who this woman was. She sat down, not gently, but as if her legs had been cut out from under her. I looked at my father. He was gray. His entire body was shaking, his hands gripping the leather arms of his chair so hard his knuckles were white. He was staring at the screen, his mouth open. He had been in his study yesterday. He had heard the sounds, the muffled shouts, and he had chosen to go out for a drive. He was seeing, for the first time, what he had chosen to ignore. The pantry scene ended. The screen went black for a single, agonizing second. Then, a new feed appeared. Timestamp: yesterday, 9:20 a.m. Location: Lanecrest Rehab, room 305. It was footage from my grandfather's room. It showed Edgar, frail in his chair, watching the exact same pantry footage on his own television. We watched him rewind it. We watched him zoom in. We watched his face turn to stone. We saw him, lucid and furious, pick up his secure telephone. We heard his voice, strong and cold. "Martin, get to Lanecrest. Get here now. Bring a tech." This was the kill shot. This was the proof. This was the end of any claim of my undue influence. This was the end of any argument that he was confused or incompetent. This was all him. Vivian made a small sound, a high-pitched keen, like a dying animal. Edgar spoke, his own frail voice cutting through the parlor. "You hit my granddaughter. Vivian," he said, his words slow and measured. "You assaulted her, in my son's house, because she wouldn't sign a paper." He looked at her, his eyes burning. "You did it because you have been trying to steal from me, and you thought I was too stupid and too weak to see it." "That is a lie," Vivian gasped, lunging forward in her chair. "A terrible lie. I was managing things. I was protecting you. She was the one trying to—" "Was she?" Martin asked, his voice silky smooth. "Noah, Exhibit B." The screen changed. It was not video. It was an audio file, my audio file. We heard Vivian's voice, crisp and clear, from her late-night phone call. "The old man won't sign, but the niece will. She trusts me. She thinks this is all just to help her grandpa." "Exhibit C," Martin said. The screen changed. Video, Late at night, Edgar's office, we saw Vivian, in gloves, her back to the camera, meticulously sifting through his desk. Exhibit D. The screen changed. Audio again. My father's voice. A pathetic, begging whisper. "Marley, please, just sign it. You're stressing her out. It's not like that. Just be soft. Please. For me." Alan Rhodes let out a sob, a broken, hiccuping sound, and put his face in his hands. With every click, another layer of Vivian's polished, perfect, dutiful daughter persona was chemically dissolved. She was shrinking in her chair, her cream-colored cashmere looking suddenly cheap and garish. She was exposed. She was caught. This was not a family meeting. It was a tribunal, and the verdict was already in. The playback stopped. The 70-inch screen went black, returning the parlor to its dark mahogany gloom. The silence that flooded the room was a heavy, pressurized thing. It was absolute. My father's muffled sobs, his face still buried in his hands, were the only sound. Vivian was breathing. She was sitting on the edge of her chair, her body rigid, her hands locked in her lap. She was taking short, sharp, shuddering breaths, as if she had been running. Her eyes, wide and bloodshot, darted from the dark screen to Martin, to Edgar, and finally, to me. Her face was a mask of livid red and waxy white. For the first time since I had known her, she had no performance left. The gracious hostess, the martyred caregiver, the concerned stepmother, all of it had been burned away. She had been stripped bare, and all that was left was the raw, ugly rage. She had been caught, and she had no story left to tell. My father lifted his face. It was a ruin, slick with tears. "Dad," he choked, his voice a pathetic whisper. "Dad, it wasn't like that. It was exactly like that, Alan." Edgar's voice cut through his son's whimpering. It was not loud, but it was final. The camera showed what it showed. The audio recorded what was said. The bank records show what was filed. "The difference, this time," he said, his gaze fixed on his son, "is that you do not get to rewrite the story. Vivian does not get to edit the narrative. The facts are in." Martin Sawyer, who had been watching this all unfold with a kind of clinical detachment, reached for the stack of navy blue-bound documents in front of him. He slid his reading glasses back on. The room, which had been a theater, now became a courtroom. "To that end," Martin said, his voice crisp and cool, "let us discuss the new facts, as of this meeting, and by Mr. Lane's direct, witnessed, and notarized order. The following changes to the estate have already been enacted." He picked up the top document. "First, effective as of 1 week ago, all previously executed powers of attorney, all fiduciary authorizations, and all financial signatory rights granted to Alan Rhodes and Vivian Rhodes, concerning the estate, holdings, personal accounts, or trust of Edgar Lane, are hereby revoked and declared null and void." Vivian's head snapped up. The shock was so profound it momentarily cut through her rage. "What?" she gasped. "Last week? You did this before the pantry? You did this after you—" Edgar looked at her, his expression as flat and cold as a winter lake. "I did it. Vivian, the moment I confirmed my trust was being met with active dishonesty. The pantry. That was just your confession." Martin, unflinching, was already moving to the next document. "Second, Mr. Lane has established a new, irrevocable living trust, the Lane Family Heritage Trust, which now holds the entirety of his primary assets. The management of this trust, including all disbursements for household expenses, payroll, and all medical care, is now under the authority of 2 co-trustees." He paused, a master of timing. He looked directly at me, his gaze clear. "Marley A. Rhodes." Then he looked back at the paper. "And Northern Colorado Fiduciary Services, a bonded, corporate third party." He looked up again, his gaze sweeping over Alan and Vivian. "From this moment forward, No check is cut, no bill is paid, no wire is transferred, without two approvals, one from Ms. Rhodes, one from the bank, your access, Alan, and yours, Vivian, is terminated. My father let out a low moan. Vivian looked like she had been struck. Finally, Martin said, his voice becoming even colder, Mr. Lane has insisted on a new provision to his will, a conditional clause. He read directly from the page, his voice echoing in the dead silence. It is hereby stipulated that should either Alan Rhodes or Vivian Rhodes be found, by a majority decision of the trustees, that is, Ms. Rhodes and the bank, to have engaged in any further acts of physical violence, financial malfeasance, attempted fraud, or coercion directed at any beneficiary of this trust. He paused, looking up over the top of his glasses, his eyes finding Vivian's. Their allotted inheritance, in its entirety, will be immediately and permanently frozen. He let that hang in the air for a beat. 100% of their share will default directly to the new Lane Rhodes Foundation for Veterans and Adult Victim Support. Checkmate. It was not just a disarming, it was a threat that extended beyond the grave. The sterile, legal language was the final blow. The last of Vivian's control shattered. She sprang from her chair, her body trembling, her face a dark, mottled red. Her finger did not point at Edgar. It did not point at Martin. It pointed at me. You! She shrieked, the word tearing from her throat. You did this. You came into my house. You wormed your way into his head. You poisoned him against his own family. She took a step toward me, her hands clenching into fists, her body vibrating with a rage so total it was terrifying. You want it all for yourself. You little bitch. You want to kill this family so you can eat alone. She took another step, a lunge, and I flinched back, bracing myself, my heart seizing, expecting her to come across the room. But she was not the only one who had moved. Nora Blake, the advocate from Adult Protective Services, who had been silent and watchful, stood up. She did not run. She did not raise her voice, in one smooth, practiced, and unimpeachable motion. She placed herself directly between me and Vivian. She did not touch my stepmother. She did not threaten her. She just stood there, a calm, immovable object, a human shield, radiating an authority that had nothing to do with money or rage. That is enough, Mrs. Rhodes, Nora said. Her voice was quiet, but it carried the unmistakable, hard edge of legal authority. Vivian stopped dead. It was one thing to scream at her stepdaughter. It was another thing entirely to charge an official from a state agency. The fight went out of her, replaced by a new, solar fear. I found my voice. It was shaking, but it was clear. I did not ask for this, Vivian, I said, my voice ringing out in the quiet room. I was looking past Nora's shoulder, at the woman who had terrorized me. I did not ask for a single dime. I never have. My voice grew stronger, fueled by months of silence. I just did not want you to use my name to apply for credit lines I did not authorize. I did not want you to use my body as a punching bag in the pantry. And I did not want you using his illness, and his room, and my father's fear, as leverage to pay for your debts. The word debts hit my father like a physical blow. He broke. The last thread of his pathetic denial snapped. It was just temporary, he suddenly wailed, his voice cracking into a high, pathetic soprano. He was looking at Edgar, his hands clasped in front of him like a child begging. Dad, I swear, it was just temporary. The banks were calling about the Aspen condo. Vivian said, she said if we just had a clean name, a clean record, just to secure the bridge loan. He was confessing to everything, in front of a lawyer, a state advocate, and a technician who was, I had no doubt, still recording every word. The banks trust a clean record. Dad, he sobbed. It was just to get us through the quarter. I was going to pay it all back, I swear I was. He had just, with his own words, confirmed the entire case for conspiracy to commit fraud. Martin Sawyer looked down at his legal pad and made a small, precise check mark. He then closed his briefcase. The sound of the brass latches clicking shut was as loud as a gunshot. "Thank you for that clarification, Alan," Martin said, his voice devoid of all emotion. "Given that unsolicited confession and the severity of the evidence presented, you must both be made aware of our next steps." He looked at Nora, then back at my father and stepmother. "We are legally and ethically obligated to submit copies of this evidence, the fraudulent applications, the forged power of attorney, and the assault footage, to the compliance departments of the banks you attempted to defraud, and, pending Mr. Lane's and Miss Rhodes's final decision, to the district attorney's office for criminal review." He let that sink in. "This," he said softly, "is no longer just a family matter." Vivian had one last spark of fight left. She sank back into her chair, her voice a low, venomous snarl. "You cannot. I'll sue. I will sue you all. I'll tell the papers you coerced him. I'll tell them she fabricated everything, that she drugged him. I will fight you." Edgar let out a sound. It was a dry, rasping noise, almost a cough, but I realized it was a laugh. He looked at the woman who had, for 10 years, run his son's life. "You do that, Vivian," he said, his voice calm. "You hire any lawyer you want. You tell them any story you can invent. You go to the newspapers, but you will have a problem." He pointed a single, trembling finger at the black, reflective surface of the television screen. "My cameras only tell the truth. The banks only tell the truth. Your story? It is just noise. And you," he said, "are done." The atmosphere in the room had completed its transformation. This was not a will reading, it was a sentencing. My father and stepmother, who had walked in just 30 minutes ago believing they were the heirs apparent, were now prisoners. They were stripped of all authority, all access, and all power. They had nothing. I looked at my father, who was staring blankly at the expensive Persian rug. His life, the one he had tried to patch together with lies and my good credit, utterly in ruins. I did not smile. I felt no joy. I just felt quiet. The defensive, hunted posture I had held for months was gone, evaporating from my shoulders. I was not the victim anymore. I was not the scapegoat. I was the co-trustee. I was, whether I wanted to be or not, in control. The parlor emptied out in a state of stunned, toxic silence. It was not a storm, but the dead. Heavy calm after a pressure drop. Martin and Nora Blake left first, their briefcases full. Noah Briggs packed his equipment with quiet efficiency, gave me a single, professional nod, and was gone. Edgar was wheeled back to his suite by the nurse, Nora following to take his official statement. My father, Alan, did not move. He just sat, a collapsed thing in an expensive leather chair, staring at the floor. He was a hollow man. Vivian, on the other hand, had shot up from her chair the moment Martin left, said nothing, and walked stiff-backed from the room. I heard her bedroom door slam shut, down the hall, followed by the distinct, metallic snick of a deadbolt. I was left alone, standing in the cold, grand room, the smell of Vivian's untouched lemon pound cake, a prop from a play that had spectacularly failed, hung in the air, sweet and sickening. I walked out, not to my room, but to the kitchen. It was as we had left it yesterday morning, the scene of the crime. The plates from the brunch were still stacked by the sink, and the pantry door, the one I had been slammed against, was still slightly ajar. A thin, pale yellow line of light cut through the gloom. It looked like a wound that had refused to close. My heart was pounding, a thick, slow beat. I felt a pull toward it. I had to go back in. I had to stand in that space one more time. I pushed the door open. It was exactly as it had been. The smell of soy sauce, metal, and dust. The single, dim bulb overhead. I stepped inside and let the door swing almost shut behind me. I ran my hand along the cold steel of the wire shelf, the one my face had been smashed against. The faint, dark bruise on my cheekbone throbbed in time with my pulse. I remembered the panic, the feeling of being trapped, the ringing in my ears, the taste of blood in my mouth. I stood there, breathing in the stale air, letting the fear rise up. But this time, it was different. It crested, and then, for the first time, it receded. It was followed by a feeling that was cold, quiet, and absolutely solid. The fear was a memory, not a reality. I was not trapped. I had stood in a room full of predators and I had not flinched. I had the keys. I was the one who could walk out. I was so lost in the moment that I did not hear her approach. "Are you satisfied?" I turned. Vivian was standing in the doorway, blocking the light. Her face was a wreck. Her eyes were swollen and red, her perfect hair disheveled. She was not wearing her cashmere. She was in a rumpled silk robe. The queen had been deposed. "Are you happy now?" she hissed, her voice a low, gravelly rasp. "You did it. You tore this entire family to pieces." I looked at her. I was not afraid. I was just tired. This family was already in pieces. "Vivian," I said, my voice calm. "It just had a nice coat of paint on it. It broke the minute you stopped seeing me as a person and started seeing me as a tool, as a signature, as a scapegoat." "A tool?" she spat, laughing a broken, ugly laugh. "I gave you a home. We fed you. We let you stay here, rent-free, when you came crawling back from whatever failure your life was. And in return, you tried to saddle me with $100,000 line of credit and a criminal record. That is not family. That is just business. And you made a bad deal." She saw that her rage was useless. The fire was gone. So she tried her last, most potent weapon, guilt. Her face crumpled. This time, the tears looked real. They were hot, bitter tears of self-pity. "And your father?" she whispered, her voice cracking. "What about him? He is in there." She hooked a thumb back toward the parlor. "A broken man. He is your father. Are you just going to throw him away? Abandon him? Let him lose his home? Is that what this is all about? Your inheritance?" It was a good shot. It was the one shot she had left, and it hurt. I thought of my father, a weak, hollow man, sobbing into his hands. I took a deep breath. "I am heartbroken over what he chose to do," I said, and my voice was steady. "But I will not stop my grandfather from helping him. If Edgar wants to use the trust to pay for my father to get therapy, or to find a decent, small place to live, I will not stand in the way. He is my father. I will not let him be homeless." I took a step forward, out of the pantry, making her take a step back into the kitchen. I was claiming the space. "But here is what I will not do," I said, my voice dropping. "I will not sign a single paper I have not read. I will not lie for him. I will not cover for you. I will not look the other way, ever again, to protect the peace. I will not enable the actions that happened in that pantry. That is over. My son will answer for his own choices." The new voice, dry and reedy, made us both jump. Edgar was standing at the entrance to the kitchen. He was not in his wheelchair. He was on his own 2 feet, leaning heavily on a black, wooden cane. He must have used every ounce of strength he had to walk this far. Nora was not with him. He had come alone. He looked at my father, who had apparently followed Vivian and was now standing in the hallway, a wretched shadow. "Alan," Edgar said, "you have to bear the consequences. My granddaughter does not." He turned his gaze, slow and heavy, to Vivian. She looked, for the first time, truly terrified. He was not a prop anymore. He was the founder. "Vivian," he said, his voice tired but hard, "you can stay in this house. You are still my son's wife. You can stay until Martin has finalized the legal separation of my son's assets from my own. You can stay until the divorce is filed." "Edgar," she began, her voice a desperate plea. He held up a shaking hand. "But, from this day forward, you are a guest. Every single household expense, the lights, the gardener, the food you eat, your credit card bills, will be routed through the new trust, and every single receipt will have to be approved by Marley. He let that sink in. If you want to buy a new dress, he said, his voice flat, you will have to submit the request. If you want to hit someone, you will have to hit the paperwork. And paperwork, he said, is not scared of you. Vivian just stared at him. I could see the final realization dawning on her. The battlefield had been moved. She was a master of the emotional fight, the whispers, the guilt, the tears, the public opinion. She had no idea how to fight a war waged on spreadsheets, legal forms, and expense reports. She had lost. She was powerless. She turned, without another word, and walked away. Later that day, after my father had been quietly escorted to a hotel by a family friend Martin had arranged, I sat with Edgar in his small private office. It was a room I had never been in. It was not like the parlor. It was functional. One wall was covered in old, framed blueprints of his first warehouses. The other was dominated by a bank of 6 small black and white security monitors, showing the gates, the delivery bay, the office. This was his true language. He was back in his chair, exhausted from his walk, a blanket over his knees. We sat in silence for a long time. I am sorry, Marley, he finally said, his gaze on the screens. For what, Grandpa? For not seeing it, for not stepping in. I saw the rot. I saw her. I knew what she was. He sighed, a heavy, rattling sound. I thought family. I thought Alan. I thought it would correct itself. I thought proximity to blood would make him better. It did not. It just made him weaker, and it put you in the line of fire. That is my fault. I looked at my grandfather, the man who had built an empire, the man who had just dismantled his own family to protect me. You are wrong, I said softly. I went over and put my hand on his. His skin was like paper. You did not step in and save me, Grandpa. You did something much more important. You gave me the tools to save myself. You gave me the admin password. You gave me the truth. He looked up at me, his old eyes sharp. I am going to use this power, I continued, nodding to the new trust documents on his desk, but not for revenge. That is what she would do. I am just going to do what I was trained to do. I am going to run the audit. I am going to secure the assets. I am going to make sure that no one, ever again, can use your name, or my name, or this money, as a weapon. The weeks that followed were a quiet, systematic dismantling. Lawyers, accountants, movers. I sat in Martin's office and signed documents. My hands steady, I signed the form that allocated a permanent annual portion of the Trust's interest to the Riverton Center for Adult Victim Support, the one Nora Blake ran. I sat in that same center's beige conference room, under fluorescent lights, at a folding table. I spoke to a small group of 6 people, a few veterans, a woman whose brother had stolen her identity, a man whose parents had mortgaged his house. I was not there as a rich heiress. I was there as Marley Rhodes from Harborline Risk Solutions. I talked to them about credit freezes, about data security, about encrypted hard drives, and about the legal power of a locked door. I moved out. I got my own place, a small, 1-bedroom apartment over a quiet bookstore downtown. It was small, but it was mine. The first thing I did, before I even unpacked my sofa, was install a simple, top-of-the-line security camera, aimed at my own front door, not because I was scared, but as a reminder, a symbol. The end came quietly. I was in my new kitchen, drinking a cup of coffee. My phone sat on the counter, showing the small, crisp image from my security camera. It just showed my front door. Locked, quiet, safe. I looked at the peaceful, mundane image for a long moment. I watched the dust motes swirl in the hallway light. I was in charge of what I saw. I was in charge of who had the key. I sipped my coffee. Then, I reached out and tapped the screen. Turning the monitor off, I did not need to watch. I was safe. The day my stepmother hit me in the pantry, she thought my grandfather was too weak to take anyone's side. It turns out, the man they saw as the weakest was the only one brave enough to turn on all the lights. And for the rest of my life, I will never walk into another dark room without knowing my own hand is on the switch. Thank you so much for listening to this story. Let us know in the comments where you are listening from. We would love to connect with you and hear your thoughts. Please subscribe to Lila Revenge Stories, like this video, and give us some extra support by hitting that like button so more people can hear this story.